think I relate to any of my characters. I've played a crack addict from Boston. I've played an Upper East Side princess.
Bryan Freedman, one of the most formidable legal minds in Hollywood, has never been one to speak without purpose. And when he recently addressed his plans for deposing Blake Lively in the ongoing legal battle that has gripped both the entertainment industry and the public imagination, the impact was immediate and explosive, forcing everyone to re-evaluate the narrative they thought they understood about Lively's accusations against Justin Baldoni and the alleged behind-the-scenes chaos on the set of It Ends With Us. According to Freedman, the core issue isn't just the allegations themselves, it's the glaring absence of something crucial: evidence. As he pointedly put it, she has no evidence and she knows it. A line that has since been dissected, quoted, and replayed across countless media outlets. This wasn't merely a defensive tactic. It was a bold assertion that flipped the burden of proof and positioned Lively as someone making claims she couldn't substantiate. And the subtext, increasingly echoed by insiders and observers alike, is that this fight is not solely Blake's, it's Ryan Reynolds as well, with whispers that he has been orchestrating much of her strategy from behind the curtain. The revelation has shifted the discussion from a simple co-star dispute to a broader Hollywood power play, where personal alliances, public image management, and private influence collide. Freedman's paradoxical framing, that Blake Lively, widely known as a poised, assertive, and meticulously controlled presence both on and off camera, was allegedly terrified of Baldoni, has only deepened the intrigue. The word terrified is not one that floats around lightly in this business, and hearing it attached to a figure whose professional identity has long been linked with strength and control sends shockwaves through the industry. This is a woman who, by numerous accounts, oversaw every detail of her intimate scenes, controlling camera angles, blocking, and even physical interactions down to the placement of a hand. Yet in her lawsuit, she paints herself as powerless, blindsided, and subjected to unwanted improvisations that made her feel unsafe. The contradiction is almost cinematic in itself. A plot twist where the supposed director of her own on-set experience now claims to have been a victim of that very environment. Freedman, whose career has been built on dissecting inconsistencies and exposing the soft underbelly of carefully constructed public narratives, seems to be using this contradiction as a cornerstone of his defense, subtly inviting the public and the court to ask, how can someone who allegedly micromanaged every intimate moment also claim to have been trapped in situations beyond her control? Adding to the complexity, Lively's team has accused Freedman and the Wayfarer parties of engaging in a retaliatory smear campaign, pointing to media statements, including to outlets like TMZ, as evidence of defamation. Yet, from a legal standpoint, Freedman and his supporters argue, this is simply a matter of public defense. If someone levels serious accusations that threaten your career and reputation, are you not entitled to respond publicly, particularly through your attorney? The attempt to frame such responses as harassment or retaliation, they argue, collapses under scrutiny, especially when considering the technical definitions in law, where retaliation typically requires an employment relationship between the parties. In this case, there is no such link between Lively and individuals like Jed, who has also been accused in the surrounding PR battle. From a purely legal perspective, the most that could be claimed is defamation, publishing statements to third parties that allegedly cause harm. Yet even here, the strength of the claim depends entirely on whether those statements were false, a question that becomes increasingly murky given the amount of on-set testimony that contradicts Lively's portrayal. The deeper you go, the more the timeline becomes a critical point of contention. According to sources aligned with Freedman, none of the alleged discomfort or fear was raised during filming, when it could have been addressed immediately. Instead, these claims surfaced only after production wrapped, which, in Freedman's telling, suggests a strategic post-production reframing rather than a genuine contemporaneous grievance. This is further complicated by accounts from crew members and insiders who describe Lively as not just an active participant in crafting the intimate scenes, but as the de facto intimacy coordinator, overseeing safety, choreography, and emotional tone, often stepping in to make adjustments and demanding multiple retakes until the scene matched her vision. One insider recalls her rejecting certain camera angles outright, claiming they detracted from the vulnerability she wanted to convey. while another describes her dictating the exact positioning of Baldoni's hands during a pivotal moment. These are not the actions of someone paralyzed by fear or blindsided by a co-star's improvisations. They are the actions of someone wielding significant authority. And yet, in her lawsuit, the same scenes are reframed as moments where boundaries were crossed and trust was violated. The cognitive dissonance here is striking. Were these scenes a collaborative, controlled process, or were they a series of violations masked by professional politeness until the cameras stopped rolling? Freedman's legal instincts lead him to suggest the latter interpretation is at least partly a crafted narrative, potentially aimed at bolstering Lively's legal claims and public sympathy. But even beyond the legal chess match, this case is revealing the fault lines in Hollywood's handling of power dynamics, intimacy, and reputation management. It's a reminder that the public often sees only the polished final product, while the reality of on-set relationships can be far more complex and contradictory. The stakes are enormous, not just for the individuals involved, but for the precedent it sets in an industry where allegations alone can derail careers. Freedman knows this, and his approach reflects a willingness to litigate not just in the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion, where perception can be as influential as any legal ruling. He is effectively asking the audience, both the literal jury and the broader public, to question not just what happened, but when, why, and how the story is being told. And as new details emerge, including reports that Lively's influence on set may have overshadowed even the director's role in key scenes, the contradiction at the heart of her claims becomes harder to ignore. Was Blake Lively a vulnerable actress subjected to unwanted advances? Or was she a powerful creative force who later reframed consensual, collaborative moments as transgressions? The answer may lie somewhere in the messy middle. But for now, the battle lines are drawn, and Freedman is making it clear he's ready to fight this on every front. Armed with his reputation, his mastery of legal nuance, and a narrative that, if he's right, could dismantle Lively's case before it ever reaches a jury. Bryan Freedman, a man whose name has become synonymous with high-stakes Hollywood legal warfare, is not in the habit of speaking carelessly, and yet when he recently made his position clear regarding his intention to depose Blake Lively in the spiraling legal confrontation surrounding the production of It Ends With Us, his words landed with the kind of seismic force that ripples through both the entertainment industry and the tabloid circuit, sending studio executives, PR handlers, and fans scrambling to reassess the story they thought they knew. In Freedman's telling, this was not simply a matter of protecting his client Justin Baldoni's reputation, but of dismantling what he framed as a house of cards built on an absence of hard proof, encapsulated in his now widely quoted line, "She has no evidence and she knows it." A statement that did not merely deny wrongdoing, but reframed the entire dispute by shifting focus from accusation to substantiation, inviting the public and, eventually, a court to interrogate the credibility and motives behind Lively's claims. The ripple effects were immediate, amplified by the undercurrent of speculation that Ryan Reynolds, Hollywood's charming, calculated marketing genius and Lively's husband, was not just a supportive spouse but an active behind-the-scenes architect of her strategy, leveraging his own industry clout in ways that blurred the line between marital loyalty and tactical influence, thereby elevating what might otherwise have been dismissed as a bitter co-star disagreement into a full-blown Hollywood power struggle where reputations, careers, and public narratives are weapons as potent as any piece of physical evidence. Freedman's paradoxical framing, that Blake Lively, an actress celebrated for her composed poise, exacting attention to detail, and an almost legendary degree of control over her professional image, was allegedly terrified of Baldoni, struck many as an almost novelistic contradiction, the sort of twist screenwriters would envy for its dramatic irony, because here was a woman known to micromanage her intimate scenes to the point of dictating precise camera angles, choreographing the placement of a co-star's hands, and vetoing framing choices she deemed unflattering, suddenly recasting herself in her legal complaint as a passive, powerless participant subjected to unwanted improvisations that stripped her of agency. For Freedman, a seasoned litigator who has built a career on exposing fissures in carefully curated public personas, this tension between the on-set accounts and the lawsuit's framing is not a side note but a central pillar of the defense, Because if he can successfully persuade both the legal system and the wider audience that these two Blakes, the authoritative creative force and the allegedly cornered victim, cannot coexist without one being a performance, then he undermines the foundation of her credibility before the trial even begins. Yet the contradictions do not end there, for while Lively's legal team has accused Freedman and the Wayfarer parties of orchestrating a retaliatory smear campaign, citing statements made to outlets like TMZ as examples of defamation and harassment, the counterargument is both straightforward and legally potent. In the absence of an employment relationship between the parties, retaliation is a legal impossibility, and responding publicly to accusations, particularly through an attorney, is not harassment but self-defense, especially in an age where silence can be interpreted as an admission of guilt. The most that could be claimed under defamation law is that certain statements were false and harmful, but even then the burden rests heavily on the plaintiff, and that burden becomes even more daunting when multiple crew members and production insiders offer accounts that directly contradict her narrative, describing a set where Lively wielded more influence than even the director in key moments. These accounts paint a vivid picture. Lively not as a bystander, but as the de facto intimacy coordinator, making adjustments mid-scene, calling for multiple retakes to fine-tune emotional tone, and insisting on framing choices that accentuated vulnerability in precisely the way she envisioned. One crew member recalls her halting production to adjust Baldoni's hand placement by inches, while another remembers her rejecting a planned shot because it would make her appear too composed when the scene called for rawness, actions that, in hindsight, seem incompatible with the idea that she was blindsided or overpowered in those same moments. And if this portrait is accurate, then the timeline of her complaints, surfacing only after filming wrapped, becomes more than just an incidental detail. It becomes a strategic red flag, suggesting that the framing of these events may have been shaped less by what happened in real time, and more by how those events could be retroactively cast to serve a legal and public relations objective. As it is about dismantling her case, the implications reach far beyond these two stars. At stake is the precedent for how power dynamics, intimacy, and creative control are interpreted when disputes arise after the fact. If someone with as much documented on-set authority as Lively can successfully recast herself as powerless in retrospect, it could open the door for future claims where creative collaboration is retroactively reframed as misconduct, a scenario that terrifies producers and actors alike. And then there is the shadow narrative, that Reynolds, ever the savvy image builder, may be guiding the strategy not only to protect his wife, but to preserve the wholesome, marketable brand they've both cultivated. A brand that thrives on quick wit, romantic banter, and a curated sense of authenticity that would be deeply undermined by any sustained perception of manipulative or opportunistic behavior. In that light, every legal filing, every media leak, every public statement becomes part of a broader PR chess game, with Freedman and Reynolds as the rival grandmasters, each anticipating the other's moves weeks in advance. As the deposition looms, the stakes sharpen. Will Lively's testimony reinforce her claims with specificity and verifiable detail, or will it reveal fissures that Freedman can pry open wider in cross-examination? Will crew members be willing to testify under oath to the level of her control on set, or will the industry's code of silence and loyalty to star power mute their accounts? And perhaps most critically, will the public, whose perception is already a battleground, see Lively as a truth-teller bravely challenging an entrenched system, or as a skilled player in that very system, leveraging its mechanisms for her own ends? For now, all that is certain is that Freedman is prepared to fight with every tool at his disposal, that the contradictions at the heart of Lively's story are not going away, and that in this collision of legal process, celebrity image management, and behind-the-scenes Hollywood reality, the truth may prove to be not a clean revelation but a messy, ambiguous tangle. One that, like the best films, keeps its audience arguing long after the credits roll. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel Corvanta.